I think when you're coming back from injury, the hard balance with that has kind of been being that competitor, but also humbling yourself and knowing to be patient. It's a balance of being competitive. It's a balance of always thinking that you're in a position to win no matter what your fitness is, and also being humble enough to know like, okay, maybe you're not in heat one right now, but how can you win your race?
By the time Justyn Knight made his Olympic debut in Tokyo 2021, he had already written an impressive resume as one of the greatest distance runners in Canadian history. After a standout career at the high school and collegiate levels, including multiple OFSA, Canadian Junior, and NCAA Division I titles in track and cross country, the early years of Knight's pro career had continued on very much the same trajectory, notching world-class times against the best athletes on the planet and consistently finding himself on the start line of global championship finals. At those Tokyo Olympics, it seemed Knight's star could only continue to climb higher, navigating the semifinal round with a poise beyond his young years before running to a remarkable 7th place showing in the Olympic final. Yet while his Olympic debut should have been the springboard onto an even higher level in global distance running, it would end up being the last race Knight would run for nearly 4 years. Unknown to all but his inner circle at the time, much of Knight's 2021 Olympic season had been contested while managing a persistent lower leg injury that wouldn't go away. Despite running personal bests at 1,500 and 5,000 meters, and his brilliant showing at the games themselves, the injury proved more severe than even he had realized at the time, leading to a years-long journey that included surgery and relearning how to run. Add in a coaching change and a move across the continent, and the Justyn Knight of 2025 has undergone a lifetime of change from the young star who burst onto the Olympic stage 4 years ago. Following a remarkable return to racing after years away, Justyn joins the show today to talk about the long road back to the top of the distance running world, and how the lessons of the past several years of challenges and setbacks have only served to strengthen him in his pursuit of the same lofty goals. Justyn, welcome to the Shakeout Podcast.
Thanks for having me, John. It's nice to see you again, too.
Yeah, so nice to have you. You just got back from Europe at the time that we're talking, and you have been on a heck of a roll, quite the whirlwind tour of competitions over the last couple of months, the Canadian National Championship, several races in Europe, and we're going to dive into all of that. But first off, how does it feel to simply be back racing after so long away?
Honestly, it's just on a complete blessing. I think like that's the best way to put it. I think I used to just take good health for granted when I was younger. It's funny because like you hear a lot of like older people, or not even older, but like as you get out of your 20s and stuff like that, people saying like, oh, my back hurts now, or I have pain in this area, and like you're not going to be indestructible forever. And I used to be like, yeah, sure, buddy, like my body feels indestructible right now and it feels fine. But as you get older, you start to realize that sometimes your body just breaks on you, and there's nothing that you necessarily did wrong, or anything that you change. Sometimes it might be, it could be overtraining. It could be like anything. You could have just, twisted your ankle and it didn't recover the same way. But all that to say is just like now I really, really value good health and taking care of my body.
Yeah, you almost need to lose it for a period of time in order to appreciate what it is to be truly healthy. I've certainly found that. I feel like I hit my mid-20s, and it's probably accelerated for us distance runners by the pounding that we put our bodies through, but you start to wake up some mornings and feel a lot older than your birth certificate says you are. Talking about injury, it seems like a good place for us to go back a couple of years, and for some of our listeners, they're listening to this and thinking, oh yeah, Justyn Knight, 1252 man, like, what the heck happened? Where'd he go? Your last race prior to 2025 was the Tokyo Olympic final in the 5,000 meter. That's 2021 for those listening. So almost 4 years ago from when you finally did make it back to a starting line this year. You were 7th there. It seemed like your star was just continuing to ascend. What happened? Where'd you go for the last number of years?
Yeah, so that season for me was a phenomenal season, but I think that was like kind of the start of where my body was starting to break down. Earlier on in the season, I remember I ran a 1,500, actually here in Eugene, Oregon, and I ran a pretty good time. And I remember that like I was doing a little shakeout run the day after the race, and like, I don't know, almost like 5 minutes in, 10 minutes in, what I now know as being my Achilles was like really hurting me. And it was so weird. Like I've never had that pain before. I ended up taking off my shoes, like the training shoes that
Oh,
I was
wow.
wearing. And as soon as I took them off, like my Achilles felt better. So I ended up just walking back to the hotel. I didn't run for the rest of the day, whatever. And then that was kind of like the beginning of the end where like gradually I'd go to practice and like my Achilles wouldn't feel great. What I used to do is like heat up. I would stick my foot into like a bucket of hot water or something just to kind of heat up that
Okay.
area. And then I was able to practice and I felt like that was like fine for me. It didn't seem
Yeah.
like that big of a problem. And then I got to Tokyo months later, or yeah, and I remember doing the semifinal, and it was like worked out really well for me. I think I'm pretty sure I got third.
Yeah,
Uh,
you're top three in the semifinal. I remember that, beating some pretty
yeah,
heavy hitters in the process.
yeah, exactly. And I felt really good, but like after the semifinal race, like I didn't even cool down because I was just in so much pain in my Achilles. And
Wow.
I remember my coach at the time, he had to like help me on the bus and almost not carry me, but like I was using him kind of as like a crutch, I guess.
Yeah.
And I was able to like manage the pain well enough to go into the final. And in the final, I'll never forget. I think there was like maybe 500 meters left to go, and I was still in the race at that point in time, and
Yeah.
my body was feeling great. Like I wasn't tired aerobically, I wasn't going lactic or anything. And there was a moment where I was just like, oh man, like I can win this thing maybe. Like I'm feeling really really good. Then yeah, I just remember like, there was a move being made. It might have been 500 or 600 meters. And I remember at that point when I tried to like attach myself, my Achilles felt like I didn't really understand what the feeling was, but it felt like if I continued to accelerate and pick up the speed, that it was just gonna pop, right? And at the time I didn't really know how serious it was or like where things would go from here or even like what specifically was hurting me because I didn't know it was my Achilles at the time. And I remember I didn't mail it in, but I was just like, okay, like there's still a season after the Olympics. Like you might want to do like the Diamond League in I think it was Switzerland I was supposed to go to after, and you don't want to hurt yourself like even leading into next year by like forcing yourself and then all of a sudden you can't finish the race. So I
Yeah.
remember like I continued going the pace that I was running at, but I didn't like try to force myself to the well. Looking back, I probably would have said, "Screw it, let's do it anyways."
If you knew that you were going to be out for almost 4 years anyways, but
Yeah, I would
hindsight's
have just done it.
2020.
Yeah, but yeah, and then like after that, I ended up getting an MRI, and the results read that I had a partially torn Achilles, and it was basically hanging on by a thread, and
Wow.
unfortunately, the process of dealing with it kind of took a lot longer than I really needed or I
Yeah.
wanted to. From there,
Yeah.
that's
So, and what did that process look like? Because you were, we saw the same physiotherapist for years, Mary Lou Lammy, and
yeah,
for years you were unable to, or at least for several months at a time, for many years, you were not even able to run. It was so
yeah.
bad. So, what did that process look like of not just getting the surgery done, but actually rehabbing it to a point where you could start training again?
Yeah, to be honest, and rehab is great to even talk about. The history that I've had is like I never used to do any sort of activation, any sort of like prehab type of stuff. Like I wasn't really injury prone. Like there's
Yeah.
times when I might have gotten hurt, and we had a great physio in Virginia, and like sometimes he'd give me exercises, uh, and I would do them for a week, but then like the moment I felt better, I just stopped doing them,
Yeah.
right? Um, and that's kind of the lifestyle I was used to living. So like rehab was really tough for me because I never had too much demand from running other than running.
Yeah.
The stuff I never even weightlifted until like 2022, 2023. So
Yeah.
like my job was literally I go for my runs and then my day ended and I used to play video games. I used to, you know, maybe play basketball, stuff like that. And now all of a sudden, like to get better, the main focus is like all these rehab exercises. And yeah, so like I did see Mary Lou for a little bit of time. The hard thing about that is that like she was in Vancouver, so
You're on the far side of the country.
Exactly. So, she was very helpful. She gave me lots of exercises to do. And then, um, she also, would treat me when I'd go out there. There's been times when I visited for like 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks.
Hmm.
And then, I was working with Team Canada with the doctors and physios there. And
That was
I
at
was,
the East Hub in Toronto, correct? Like the Athletics Canada High Performance Center.
yeah, at the East Hub. And they were giving me like, eccentric stuff, and everything. And I think at the time, it was diagnosed as just being partial tear.
Hmm.
But later on, I kind of found out I had Haglund's, and the reason why the recovery wasn't going as fast or smoothly as I would have liked is because it didn't matter how much rehab I was going to do. Like, I needed to get surgery.
And
So,
that's Haglund's deformity, which is, if I correct me if I'm wrong, that's like a bone spur on your heel, correct?
yeah,
Like it's like a
exactly that.
growth. And is that what you needed operating on eventually?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
so an Achilles tear turns into revealing something a lot worse that is,
exactly.
yeah, in need of surgery. So when did that surgery take place?
So that surgery took place like pretty late. It was in the summer of 2023. And then, shortly after in the fall, I moved to Oregon because I just
Yeah,
joined Nike, and I joined what was then known as Bowerman
the
Track
team
Club.
formerly known as Bowerman Track Club. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of years there between the Olympic final, that's August 2021, and July 2023, when you finally got the surgery, where things just weren't getting better because you weren't able to get to the root of the problem. Is that correct?
Yeah. It was just
Wow.
like, everybody was trying to do their best. The physios that I was working with, they were helpful in terms of like, trying to understand the problem and help me, get through the rehab exercises. And, I was working with a couple of different strength and conditioning coaches because there was a couple of changes at Athletics Canada.
Yep.
Uh, and they were all very helpful with like, not only helping me with the rehab, but also learning how to do exercises properly.
Yeah.
Uh, it's just that like the original diagnosis was not necessarily right, I guess you
Yeah.
could say.
Which is
So,
tough if you're following the wrong map. You're not going to get to the
yeah,
right destination. I love
exactly.
that you touch on how the job of running became so much more than simply going for a run. I think many of our young listeners, hopefully this is a wake up call for them. And for our older listeners, I think
Oh,
they're
yeah.
probably all rolling their eyes, being like, yeah, I get
Yeah.
that. Because when you're young and you're as talented as you are, it is sometimes just as easy as, yeah, you get out the door, you do what coach tells you, and that's that. You
Yeah.
don't worry about how you're going to feel the next day. You don't have to do all those little things just to get your body ready to run a
Yeah.
workout or afterwards to prepare for the next one. And in my case, and it sounds like in your case as well, it really does take uh, something as kind of catastrophic or traumatic as an injury to teach you that, oh yeah, I'm not indestructible, and if I want to continue in this sport, it's going to take a lot more work than simply getting out and working hard. I think the easy part for someone like you is probably the training hard and the competing hard.
Yeah.
It's all the little stuff that ends up being more like work. How have you managed that over the last couple of years, especially when you haven't had the reward or the positive feedback of being able to go out and race the way that you used to? When it feels like you're doing all of the work without any of the payoff of the actual thing that is your job, which is to race.
Yeah.
How did you stay motivated through all of that?
Man, it was really tough. And, I'm not gonna lie to the listeners and make it sound like, oh, it was easy. I always
I
knew I was
love band exercises.
Yeah, no, there's times when I was just like, man, it still hurts. Like, what's the point in doing this? It's
Yeah.
been a week now and I don't feel any different than I did before. And, I think that's kind of where I like kind of played into my faith a little bit more. Like,
Yeah.
I grew up Christian. I'm a Christian and everything. And, I always think that, there's a purpose for everything. And like,
Yeah.
sometimes it's bigger than me. And I know that sometimes to get the result, it's not gonna just you're not gonna change things immediately. And there was days, I'm not gonna lie, like there's some days where I was just like really, really sad. And
Yeah.
I felt like something was unfairly taken away from me. That being
Mm,
said, it's like the reason why I say unfairly is like even though I didn't do all these band exercises and stuff like that, it's not like I was going out and partying every single
Yeah,
night. You know
you've
what I
done
mean? Like,
nothing wrong to deserve a torn Achilles, or even
yeah,
more so, a bone spur.
exactly. And I felt like it was unfair, and I felt like, why me? And I felt like, you know, uh, what did I ever do to deserve this?
Yeah.
And the way I think of it now, and the way that I was telling myself in the moment, is that I have a lot of people in my circle, uh, people, important people and stuff that believe in me. And
Hmm.
they believe in me more than just someone that's going to make an Olympic team. Like, these people think I can get a medal,
Yeah.
um, and they think that I can, leave my mark on track and field. And I've always believed that way about myself. I'm the type of competitor, and like in a non-cocky way, is like the objective is to win, right?
Yeah.
And I have done a lot of losing in my career, as much as like my
You've
NCAA
done a lot
career.
of winning too for good measure.
Yeah, I've done some winning, I've done some losing, but every single race that I go out in like even the races this year, I lost like crazy this year. But every single race where I lined up, I went out with the intention to win.
Yeah.
And what I had in my mind, like when all this was going on, is like, okay, this is unfair, what's going on to you, but why did you have to go through this?
Hmm.
And I think essentially like the answer is I worked hard, but I don't think I was doing everything in my power to be a gold medalist. You know what I
Mm.
mean? And
Yeah.
I think like I've started to see what it actually takes. And that goes from, you know, lifting weights, making a priority to go to altitude. I never went to altitude until I
Yeah.
joined Nike. Um, Nutrition, and don't get me wrong, it's like I ate really well even in 2021, but I never did like the protein shakes or recovery drinks and the carbohydrates,
Yeah.
all this type of stuff. I haven't even tried bicarb yet, and that's for a different reason. But as I was saying, like there's so many things that go into being an Olympic gold medalist or a
Hmm.
world championship medalist, and I was definitely not aware of everything that needs to be done. Whereas I think going through this injury, it's kind of shown me how you how you have to know your body and know what it needs. Even
Yeah.
like I remember working with Mary Lou, and and I'm a really honest person, so like me and Mary Lou, we'd have these talks as well. And I told her, I was like, sometimes I used to get treatment by you, and I didn't even know what you were talking about sometimes. Like I was just trying to
Nodding
get fixed.
along.
You would tell me to do some exercise, and I'd be like, yeah, 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 I'm gonna do it, and I never did them. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And kind of looking back now and after this injury is like she's seen me since I've got injured, like since I've started running, and she's just like, wow, like your body's moving a lot better, and like you're better at this exercise and stuff like that. And I told her it's because like I started actually doing the stuff that
Yeah.
you asked me to do. And yeah, all that stuff plays a huge role in kind of how you develop as an athlete and get the best out of yourself.
It goes back to that old cliche that hard work beats talent unless talent works hard, and talent got
Yeah,
you very far. Not to say you weren't working hard. I mean, multiple time
yeah,
NCAA champion. You made 3 straight global finals in the 5,000 before this injury. But like you say, the difference between seventh at the Olympic Games and the top of the podium is those little things, the minutia, the stuff that you don't think about doing until you're forced to think about doing it. You also
yeah,
talk about the people that have surrounded you, and you've had this supporting cast that hasn't stopped believing in you over the last 4 years. I think a lot of people would have hung them up and said, "This just isn't worth
yeah,
the effort and the time," especially because it's not fun. Nobody loves doing physio exercises and cross training for months and months on end. Can you speak a little bit about what that support group has looked like? And maybe we'll take that and talk a little about the big coaching switch that you made as well about a year and a half ago, almost 2 years
yeah,
ago now. The move out to Eugene, working with
yeah.
Jerry Schumacher, working alongside Moh Ahmed, the only other Canadian man who's ever run faster than you over 5,000. Talk to us a little bit about what the support network has looked like over these years and how it's changed and who is in that kind of close inner circle right now.
Yeah, my support network has been, great for me. And, the one thing I've learned is like you can't just let everybody in. I used to be the type of person that I used to just see whoever was available, and like, you know, I wasn't really paying attention to how I feel after, because as I said, I never had any sort of like real problems or
Yeah.
anything. Whereas like this time around, I've learned so much more about my body. I've learned how to identify things. I've learned like what works for me, what doesn't work for me, what type of treatment I like, what type of
Hmm.
treatment I don't like. And I've kind of been able to kind of shrink my circle a little bit more and kind of stay within, the people I trust and the people that have been good for me. I would say like the people I surround myself with now, they're very obsessed with uh they're like Mary Lou, like you know how
Yeah.
Mary Lou is.
Yeah.
They're obsessed with the puzzle. They're obsessed with
Hmm.
fixing things. They're obsessed with, the people that they decide to work with. And I'm not
Yeah.
even talking about just athletes. Like some of the people I work with, like, work on a general public population as well. And their interest is not just limited to who's doing what, who's on this stage, Olympic stage or NBA or this, that, the next. Like they're interested in each and every one of their clients, and like they're
Yeah.
they're so focused on helping people.
Hmm.
And that's like kind of like what I've definitely enjoyed uh learning about like some of the people I've been working with and their
Yeah.
dedication, because the same way people might view me as being very dedicated to my craft, and on Christmas Day he's running on at 5 o'clock in the morning to do his
Yeah.
long run. Is like a lot of the people that I work with is like they're obsessive too. Like they have the weekend off, but they're still texting me, "Hey, I was thinking about you, and I'm thinking like maybe this exercise or next time when we do treatment for this, like we approach it in this way." So it's been
Totally.
really cool to definitely gain a bigger appreciation for the people in the medical field and how
Yeah.
they've kind of mastered their craft and everything that goes into being the best therapist that you can be. Yeah.
Yeah, they're the true believers as well. They have
Yeah.
that same X factor that makes the best athletes in the world the best, and it applies in
Yeah.
different fields as well.
And also I think the other thing too is like I'd shout out Nike as well, because, when they signed me, like it was a time where I haven't ran for a
Almost
bit
two
of time
years.
already, like some time went by, like as you mentioned, like the last time I competed was in 2021 at the Olympics. And they didn't have to take a chance on me. They didn't have to allow me to join their group, but as I said, like those people believed in me, and they want to help see things through and
Hmm.
accomplish something together. So I will forever be grateful to Nike for, you know, believing in me and giving me a chance when,
Yeah.
a lot of people probably would think about it a little bit more.
And what has that move to Eugene and to the Nike group looked like to set some of the stage? Prior to this, 2021, for instance, you were still working with your college coach, Chris Fox. Reebok at the time had built a professional group in Virginia really around you,
Yeah.
and that dissolved for other reasons that we won't get into. And you end up moving across the country, signing with a new group, and joining a coach in a program where you go from being kind of far and away the most talented guy in the program to, and uh, I mean no offense by this at all, to being only the second fastest Canadian in the group. I mean, you're training alongside Moh Ahmed all of a sudden. What
Yeah.
was it like shifting to the new program and to this new group of athletes and moving the furthest away from home that you'd ever lived as well? I mean, Syracuse across the lake from where you grew up in Toronto,
Yeah.
Virginia, 90-minute flight, and now you're way on the West Coast in College Town, USA. What was that process like? How was that adjustment period, especially while you weren't able to really run full time with
Yeah.
while you're still rehabbing?
Yeah, there was a lot of variables that kind of made me anxious or nervous about the new journey that I was on. Some of them you kind of mentioned is like, being far from home. When I went to Syracuse, when I lived in Virginia, I used to drive 11 hours, which is long, but
Yeah.
like just straight up the East Coast back home. I was able to, hop on a quick flight. I don't even remember exactly how long, but it couldn't have been longer than like an hour and a half. But
Yeah.
going back to Toronto was relatively easy, and I never really had to think about it. Like if I want to go home, as long as I wasn't working out, I could go home for the weekend and then come back. And I
Yeah.
used to do stuff like that. Whereas, being on the West Coast is, it's a 4 hour flight, right?
Yeah.
Uh, so I have to be a little bit more intentional on when I can go home and what I'm exactly going home for. The other thing that was really hard too is like, you know, being an athlete at Syracuse and, joining Coach Fox at our professional team, I've been with the same coach for like almost a decade,
Yeah.
right? And Coach Fox, like, he truly got to see me grow, not only as like a human, but like as an athlete as well.
Mm-hmm.
Coming to his program from high school, he kind of had like, you know, something that he can mold into his own because I didn't have too much mileage on me just coming out of high school.
Yeah.
And we decided to take our time with it. Like, I went from 35 miles to, maxing out my senior year at like 50 miles a week and stuff. So
Oh man.
the good old days. That's when I didn't have to double too much. But
Yeah, 50 miles a week was enough to win an NCAA cross championship. Boy,
yeah,
oh boy.
and
Anyways.
it's crazy because like when you're with a coach for that long, you know how it is too, like being at UBC and training in Canada versus going down to the States and training with like one of these uh I wouldn't say more notable coaches, but like the popular
Oh yeah,
clubs.
definitely. Yeah.
It's like you have to buy in to a certain extent.
Hmm.
And myself and obviously like a lot of the Syracuse people that have been at Syracuse, we bought into, Coach Fox and what it means to be coached by him. And I think when you buy into the level that I was bought in, a lot of my teammates, it's kind of scary to all of a sudden, 9, 10, almost 10 years later, decide to go try something else at kind of like a really pivotal part of your career. And
Definitely.
it was definitely a little bit nerve wracking. Luckily, I've always had a tremendous amount of respect for Jerry.
Yeah.
And even when I was in college, like before I was even given the option to, you know, be a part of a group in Virginia, I remember it was my dream to run for Jerry. Like Mo was my
Yeah.
hero. Evan Jagger, I remember seeing him in a hotel in Palo Alto and being like, "Oh my God, like I can't
Starstruck.
believe,"
Yeah.
you know what I mean? I was starstruck. So it was nice. It was scary, but also at the same time, I had a lot of faith because like I always kind of it was always a dream of mine to be
Yeah.
training with these type of guys and train under Jerry. So, but it was a little bit nerve wracking knowing that like okay, like I'm going from a group that like things were always catered to me to
Hmm.
now like I gotta find a way to be a part of a system, right?
Yeah, and Jerry Schumacher is famous for a system-based approach. It's
Yeah.
the My Way or the Highway program, and from everything I've learned to understand, it's
Yeah.
okay. Well, if the best guy in the group is doing this, everybody's doing the same thing and hanging on. How was that process, especially as you've gotten back into health? What's it been like to train alongside someone like Mo, who, like you mentioned, we both grew up looking up to him. He's
Yeah.
accomplished pretty much everything there is to accomplish in the sport, and you guys have competed against each other on the world stage for years. What's it
Yeah.
like having him as a teammate now?
Yeah, it's been really great. Obviously, like me and Mo, we've been friends uh probably since I've made the World Championship team in 2017, and
Yeah,
even then, it's like when I was in college, sometimes I used to like DM him and stuff for advice, and like he was always great with getting back to me. Him and a bunch of other Canadians like Matt Hughes and
yeah,
Cam Levins and stuff like that. And I think like knowing Mo or being friends with him, you know how it is on the running scene, especially like I'm not going to Flagstaff or Park City, when I was a part of a different crew. So I only used to see Mo at these big races. Like I'd either
yeah.
see him at a Diamond League or I'd see him at World Champs. And hanging out with Mo, I do have like an appreciation for him because when he is at World Champs or, a Diamond League or one of these big races, it's like he kind of has like this killer instinct of like locking in. Like you can tell he's super focused. He's super meticulous on like, what he's doing, what he's there for and everything like that. And, we were able to have great conversations and stuff like that, but I always felt like, I could tell like, we're here for a reason.
Yeah, he's here.
And,
It's a business trip for this guy.
yeah, when you're Olympic silver medalist, there's some pressure on you. And
Totally.
he's always handled the pressure really well and he's always been very consistent. But going to say now, like being teammates with him and seeing him on a daily basis, I never knew how funny Mo is and like how joyous he is. He's very loud, he's very talkative. Um, it's been really cool to kind of see him in a in a different light, like not being like such a competitive atmosphere.
Yeah.
And uh fortunately enough, like it's not just Mo, but like all my teammates. It's crazy because we have so much talent on one team, and none of these guys have an ego whatsoever. It's never like I'm better than you, or this is what I did in college, and or like I'm faster than you in like this speed stuff, so like let me be in the front. Like these guys are very welcoming, and it's very team oriented. I'll never forget, like when, especially when I was running earlier on and like getting back from injury, I was struggling in one of the workouts, and it was going to be close to it was my turn to lead essentially.
Yeah.
And like the guys, everybody was tired, but like the guys were just like, no, Justyn, don't worry. Like you can stay in second, or you can go at the very back, but like
Yeah,
you don't
tuck in,
have
let
to.
us pull ya.
Exactly. And I think like for them to kind of not focus on themselves, or focus on like, they're tired too, and like, it's his turn to lead. He has to contribute. I think that speaks a lot to their character, that like they're willing
Definitely.
to kind of help me get across the process. It even reminds me of just like even the women's team has been very helpful for me too. Like I think you asked like what's the biggest difference between, or like what got you healthy versus, or what have you learned? Like the first year, the reason why I didn't run, like I didn't compete actually the first year
Hmm.
that I joined the team, because like I kind of kept getting injured. Like my
Yeah.
Achilles kept flaring up. I tore my hamstring. Um, all sorts of stuff that kind of hindered me from being able to compete at a high level. And one of the reasons why is because like when I joined this team, I almost felt like I had something to prove, where now I'm with guys that I used to compete against at the NCAA. I'm with like Olympic medalists. I need to show that like, I'm a part of the team. And I remember doing like some workouts. It was like fresh off of like learning how to walk again and stuff like that. And I wouldn't say I knocked the workout out of the park, but like I ran pretty fast for, I think we were doing 400s. And everybody's like, wow, like your first workout back, you looked great. But I definitely over pushed myself, and like ended up putting myself behind just because I
Hmm.
was trying to prove something. Long story short, the following year, I think it's like the fall of 2024 now, uh, we kind of went in with a different mindset. We went in with like, you don't need to rush back to do anything. Like, we just need to stack our days. Like, running consistently and running for multiple weeks is more important than like knocking out a workout and then being off for 2 weeks after because your body hurts.
Hmm.
And in the fall, I think it was the fall, like kind of close to winter and stuff too, I was working out with the girls team. And at that point, like I took my job very seriously. Like I was 100% bought into what the mission was and where we're going with things. And if that's what coach wants me to do, like that's what I'm going to do. And I was trying to be like the perfect teammate at that time. And I had a great time doing it. And I actually, um, was able to like get closer with the girls team, and like
Yeah.
just from working out with them and stuff like that. And I remember like they would see me bummed out because like, my Achilles is hurting the next day, or, I have another hiccup. And I do remember like the girls, like they've picked me up on so many different instances, and, giving me advice, telling me not to give up on myself, and, kind of guiding me through dealing with injury. And I've been
Yeah.
so thankful for that, because like, you know, they didn't have to tell me anything. Like they could have just continued on with their business, but like the whole team has always gone out of their way to kind of uplift me, especially when I needed.
Yeah, it sounds a lot like you're describing a college team. And from the outside looking in, what you had at Syracuse sounded very much like that. You guys won an NCAA championship together. You led that team. I think you were fourth that year as an individual. And it seemed like to the rest of the college landscape that the Syracuse team was just so bought in and so much there to support one another over any individual goals. And the individual goals almost came as a byproduct of being there to support one another. Is it fair to make that comparison, that what you've had since joining Nike and Eugene has put you back in that real team environment where everyone's there to help everybody else get better?
Yeah, 100%. Like it's been, yeah, I would say like it's very close to like what you would see. in college. Obviously, like people live on their own and stuff like
Yeah,
that. So it's not
you're
like
not riding your bikes to the cafeteria every day the
yeah,
same way you were. Some things you do want to change once you
yeah,
get into your late 20s.
exactly right. But some things are different. But they've definitely. I think like the one thing that I really appreciate is like I feel like over here I have like a bunch of like big bros looking out for me, like
Yeah.
people that have already been through it, like they've been through the ringer. They're older than me. Some people are, I would say, more experienced than me, like on the Diamond League stage or this, that, the next. So like I can truly get advice from these guys on, you know, how to get back or how to be better in the future, and that's been really nice. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to go back to fall of 2024. You've just told us about working out with the women's team. Now, this is a great women's team to work out with. Karusha
Yeah.
Schweitzer, multiple-time Olympic finalist, another NCAA champion like yourself. But at the same time, it has to be tough as well when you realize the heights that you've already reached and you're no longer smashing workouts or being on the start line with guys that you know that you're capable of competing with. And you talked a little bit already about really being focused on the process and on stacking weeks rather than smashing one good workout and setting yourself back a couple of weeks recovering from it. Fast forward, it's now been a year of fairly consistent training since that point. Was there a moment sometime in the last year where you felt, okay, I am back, I'm ready to compete with the best again? When did you know that you were ready to toe the line again?
You know what? It's actually that moment didn't come until like pretty late
Mm-hmm.
here. Uh, Even though I was training in the fall and everything, I was still like, sometimes having 1 week on, 2 weeks off, 1 week on, 1 week off. Like it was a lot more consistent, and like the volume that I was able to get while I was running was a lot better than the year before, but there was still
Mm-hmm.
those moments where I would have a couple of hiccups, or like, we just introduced a little bit more speed and maybe my body needed like some more recovery time off of that. So I would say the moment that things were starting to get smoother was kind of like, I want to say like March,
Okay.
maybe like February, March. Uh, and then I think the moment that I was starting to gain my confidence, like, hey, you're back, is kind of that altitude trip that we had. When did we go to altitude? I think it was in April.
Mm-hmm.
And funny enough, that's kind of when I really kind of skyrocketed in terms of like my training ability and like what I was doing. I think the coaches were surprised because like they thought that I would be struggling even more when I got to altitude, but it
Yeah.
actually turned out I was running faster at altitude than I was
Wow,
when.
that's when you know you've hit it right.
Yeah, exactly. So, um, yeah, that was kind of the turning point for me. And then I remember coming off of altitude for my first race. I ran a 5K in LA.
Yeah, Sound Running 5K and then Portland Track Festival 5K a couple weeks after that. First time
Yeah,
really wading back into the deep end. You'd run a couple 1500s at
yeah,
Hayward Field, a home
yeah.
track. But yeah, what was that
Yeah,
like kind of getting back out there?
it was great. And like I remember it for that 5K in LA, like that was the first time that I went out at 13 flat pace. Like that's
Yeah.
what I don't know if people watched the race they would have seen, but like with at 3K, like I went out at and I was with the pack at 13 flat pace. But then, my body kind of gave out on me and I ended up running like 13:18 or something like that. And I remember my coach talking to me, both Coach Alex and Coach Jerry, and they were saying like, you still ran a good race, but I don't think like it's indicative of where you're actually at fitness wise. And they were both saying like, I think if you went out at like 13:10 pace or like, with the second group,
Hmm.
you probably would have ran like 13:10 or something like that.
Yeah.
But, you went out at 13 flat and obviously like your body didn't agree with you
Yeah,
at
if you
that.
swing big, you also set yourself up potentially to miss big.
Exactly. But looking back, I'm actually really glad that I did do it because the thing that I've kind of found out about training and coming back from injury is like all the work that I put in before, your body doesn't necessarily forget that you've
No.
already been. And sometimes just giving yourself like a hint or a taste of what you need to do is actually probably even the best way or the best I don't know if you call it a training adaptation, but like the best way to kind of help you adapt to new training.
Yeah.
And after that point, like, yeah, I ran, I wouldn't say I ran bad, but I didn't run as good as I would have wanted to and not the way I wanted to. When we fast forward to the race in Belgium when I ran 13:03,
Hmm.
it didn't feel nearly as hard because my body was like, oh, we've already experienced this pace
Yeah,
before. And the sad thing about that Belgium race is like with like 300 meters to go, I was really happy in terms of like the position I was in. And I was lining it up where like I wanted to kick. I sometimes like in some of these races coming back from injury, it's like I give too much of myself and then I don't have like that famous kick at the end.
yeah,
And I think like finishing strong is usually a lot better than like going out and like getting lactic and kind of, you know,
definitely.
struggling at the end. And the way I lined it up was like I was putting myself in position to close. And then unfortunately, like with 300 meters to go, I did try to do like my acceleration to start to kick. But then I kind of had like this hamstring cramp
Oh no.
uh, that kind of hindered my ability to kind of close the way I wanted to. And that's why it's so tough for me because I felt good and I felt like the standard was truly in reach. Like I
Yeah,
wasn't dying running 13:03, but
yeah.
unfortunately I was unable to kind of seal the deal and get to like 13 flat or faster. So
It brings up for me just the competitor in you that even a couple months before this 13:03 run, for our listeners, 13:01 is the world athletic standard this year. Your PB from 2021, 12:51, which is
yeah.
still, I think, like the third fastest time ever run by a North American. Maybe the fifth now, but you'll
Yeah,
rewrite that in short order. Um, and yeah, you talk about a couple of months ago, your body just being sucked into that world standard pace, even if your coaches didn't quite think that you were ready for it. And I think it does speak a little bit to the competitor that you are. And that's something that you became famous for, even going back to your years in high school. I remember the first time that we raced, and you wouldn't remember that we competed head to head because it was one of the worst in my career. I like to forget it, but
Oh
you
man.
got interviewed shortly after the Canadian under 20 cross country championships where you won. You made your first world cross team for the junior team, and there's this famous quote that became really like your calling card moving
Yeah.
forward, which was, "I hate losing more than other guys like winning."
Yeah.
And that was just on full display again this year because you were putting yourself in these races and competing even when your body maybe wasn't quite ready for it, and it's now back to the place where it is. But
Yeah.
can you talk to us a little bit about that competitive instinct? What goes on in the mind of Justyn Knight when you get called to your mark on a starting line? Because you do just turn into this competitive animal that
Yeah.
we very rarely get to see in the sport. It really did become something that you were famous for.
Oh
And
man.
I wonder if you ever, if you had to relearn that, or when you finally got healthy enough to compete again, was it always there waiting to be used again?
Man, like first of all, thank you so much. That's that's really nice the way that you kind of describe me, and that's crazy. But
It
yeah,
stuck
I
with
mean,
me.
yeah. In all fairness, though, I did steal that quote from a rapper. His name's Wale. It was in a Rick Ross song that I liked. But the other
We'll
quote
give
that I
joint
like
credit,
using,
you and Wallet.
me and Wale, the other quote that I like using too, and I've been saying this from when I was at Syracuse, and as far as I'm concerned, I mean, I don't remember stealing this from someone else, but it's such a basic quote that maybe I wasn't the first person to say it. But I always used to tell my teammates like don't wait for it to be your turn, make it your turn. And kind of like the way that I got that is like when I was at Syracuse, obviously I was like the number one guy for our cross country team, probably in like my sophomore year through senior year. And I love Syracuse so much and like to this day, like I still follow all the sports there. I follow, cross country track. I follow basketball, I follow
Yeah,
football, soccer, everything. I love the school. And when I was at school, I didn't want the legacy to end with just my class and
hmm,
then they start losing or like, they're not performing at the level that we're used to seeing. I wanted them to carry it on and like do even better. And I used to always tell them like, don't wait for it to be your turn, make it your turn. Like
mm,
in a workout, you should be challenging me. I'm not going to look at you and be like, oh, why is this guy trying so hard? I like when people do that because that
yeah,
means you care. And it's something I've always had for a while. And then I think when you're coming back from injury, the hard balance with that has kind of been being that competitor, but also humbling yourself and knowing to be patient. And when I say that, like you see that through, me working out with the girls team instead of being able to work out with the guys. You see that in, when I was running these 1500s in Eugene, I was in heat two,
Yeah.
right? I've, as far as I'm concerned, I haven't been in heat two in anything. You know what
Probably
I
since
mean?
your freshman year of college.
Exactly. And even then, I don't even know if I was in heat
Yeah.
two. Um, so it was such a humbling experience to me. And like, even when I went to Eugene, I had a decent race. Like I ran 3:45 in the 15,
Mhm.
but I lost to a college kid. I'll never forget. He was a really nice kid. His name's Diego Heredia, I think.
From
And
Texas, right? Or A&M?
Texas A&M, Texas A&M. And he was super nice. I met his parents after, congratulated him, like, and I'm really thankful for like running against him because he tactically beat me,
Yeah.
right? And it gave me something to think about that helped me work for when I ran my next race, which I was able to understand like what he did to me tactically and then make some adjustments. And then I'm pretty sure I was able to win the next race I was in. But
Yep.
if it wasn't for him challenging me, maybe I wouldn't have made that adjustment. Who knows? But all this to say, like, it's a balance of being competitive. It's a balance of, always thinking that you're in a position to win no matter what your fitness is, and also being humble enough to know, like, okay, maybe you're not in heat one right now, but how can you win your race? It even reminds me, the assistant coach at Oregon, his name's Chris Zielinski. Man, we used to have a lot of talks too. And I remember there would be times where I was frustrated. This is like 2023, 2024, like the first year that I joined the team.
Mhm.
And I was just so upset because like every time I ran, I didn't feel good. Or like, I'm running a 400, I'm running 68s, and it feels like I'm running 54s,
Yeah.
right? And it would just be so upsetting because the thing with track and field is like you know exactly where you stand, right? Because
Yeah.
we get to deal with time.
It's
And
so objective.
exactly. And I was upset and like I was telling him like I'm a 12:51 guy, I'm a 3:33 guy, like this is unacceptable. Like it's so hard. I don't see how I'm coming out of this. And Chris, like we'd be standing on the track and he would point up to the bleachers, or not the bleachers, the stadium, like the
Yeah,
stands.
grandstands at Hayward Field. Okay.
Yeah, not bleachers, the stands at Hayward. And he would say like what you're doing right now is you're looking at like the height where you've already been, being at like the top of Hayward.
Yeah.
And he said like obviously if you're looking all the way up there, it looks like an impossible journey. But what you got to do is you got to look at where you're at. Like pretend like you're walking up some stairs
Yeah.
instead of looking all the way at the top and being like, "Oh man, I got to go all the way up there." Why don't you look at the ground and see like, "Oh my gosh, like, put one foot in front of the other, like, win each day." That's the one thing that he'd always tell me. And when I changed my mindset from looking at where I need to be and where all like, my competitors are that I used to compete against that are doing great things in the world right now and started focusing on where am I?
Yeah.
That's when I started to get like a lot more consistent and better in training. So I'm very thankful for, Coach Chris for like helping me mentally to deal with a lot of that stuff.
And we've seen those results start to come back in just the last 6 weeks. You've raced 6 times, which
Yeah.
in and of itself, uh, probably crazy to think about a year ago when you probably weren't able to run 6 days in a row, let alone spike up and race against the top guys. Do you think that you have a new appreciation for where you're at, having had to go through this now? Obviously, you have big goals left in the sport,
Yeah.
but just to be back racing and healthy again, what does that make you feel like when you look ahead now? Do you think it's changed your outlook on the path that it takes to get to those big goals, which I imagine are still the same big goals that you've always had?
Yeah. I would say like I definitely appreciate it. And honestly, like the way I feel in my heart and like my heart just skipped a beat because I feel like it's almost like God giving me a second chance to do what I
Yeah.
love. And the thing that I look at is like, what's really interesting actually? The world in general, but like even the world of track and field, it moves on without you. I remember like, I was a very highly touted name and, I got like a lot of media attention, this, that, the next,
Yeah.
especially when I was in college. Like, I mean, when I was a pro, it was just whatever. But, um, you know, I I got a lot of respect, I got a lot of attention, and all that stuff was really nice, right? And, at first, you miss one race, you miss indoor season. Oh, where's Justyn? But then eventually it doesn't even become where's Justyn. It's just we've moved on,
Yeah.
right? And I think I'm very blessed to kind of have this opportunity for a second chance because a lot of people get to retire or they retire from having a great career in track and field.
Hmm.
And this is the whole thing where records versus medals.
Yeah.
But, you might have a record one day and then like you have five kids running under that record in the NCAA,
Yeah.
like how many years later? And going through what I've gone through and like the path I went down and like seeing how track and field moves on and like even mentally preparing for what life is like when I do retire after
Yeah.
having a great career. I think now, and I'm super blessed and I'm super thankful to understand like what it's going to look like years after I'm done running. And I think like the way that's changed my mindset is like I wouldn't say that I was ever doing it for, people to talk about me and stuff, but like I can say 100% where I'm at right now is everything that I do is solely because I believe that I can win a medal.
Yeah.
And the only reason why I want to do it is because I believe in that. And, you know, when I get to that point, God willing, if everybody forgot a week later, I'm totally fine with that. And like from the bottom of my heart, like I'm okay with that because, and this is one of the things in life too, as a life lesson, you should never do things based off of, wanting acknowledgement from other people or
Yeah.
what have you. You should always do things in the best interest of like doing it, accomplishing your goals and stuff for yourself. And I think like yeah, this whole journey has kind of really highlighted how much I believe in myself and just me getting a second opportunity to try to bring those beliefs to light is very special to me and it's very heartwarming and like I'm getting choked up even thinking about it because
Man.
not a lot of people even get this opportunity to do that. So
Yeah.
I'm very blessed, very thankful.
Oh man, that's so cool to hear. It's one thing to believe in yourself when everyone else around you is constantly telling you how much they believe in you because you're
Yeah.
killing it and you're winning everything you enter. Another thing entirely to keep that dream alive when the world has moved on.
Yeah.
And I speak for a lot of fans of the sport in saying that we are glad that even though the world of track and field may have moved on, you caught right back up and you want to be
Yeah.
part of that conversation and you're making yourself part of that conversation once again this year and again moving forward for hopefully many, many more years to come. Justyn, so great to have you back competing, back healthy. And thanks so much for taking the time to spend with us and share some of your comeback story. We will be watching keenly as it continues to be written chapter by chapter.
Thank you so much, John.
Huge thank you to Justyn for contributing to this week's episode. You can follow along with his return to racing in the year ahead by following @Justyn Knight on Instagram. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and X @Shakeout Podcast. Make sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss any of the exciting episodes coming up in the weeks ahead. I'm your host, John Gay, saying thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you again soon for your next Shakeout.